The day my daughter died, my parents were at Olive Garden singing happy birthday to my sister. I was alone in a hospital gown, bleeding into silence. I called my mom. She said they just brought out the cake. That's when I realized I had lost more than a baby. I had lost the illusion that I ever really mattered to them. My name is Elena Cross. I'm 31. I buried my child in December. And that was the day my family showed me who they really celebrate and who they quietly erase. They told me it wasn't my fault, that her heart just stopped. I didn't feel anything at first. No screaming, no tears, just cold, like something had been taken, and the warmth left with it. My husband Chris was by my side the whole time, his hand holding mine so tightly I could feel his pulse instead of mine. He whispered, "You're not alone." But I was. And that's when I reached for my phone. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe just a voice. A parent's voice saying, "We're coming." I dialed my mom, Jean. She picked up on the third ring. Music, laughter, dishes clinking. "Hi, sweetie. We're just bringing out the cake. Can I call you back?" I couldn't speak at first. Then I whispered, "Mom, I lost her." She paused, but only for a second. "Oh, Elena, I'm so sorry, honey, but it's Lily's birthday. Everyone's here tomorrow, okay?" She hung up before I could say another word. That was December 22nd. I gave birth to silence. They never showed up at the hospital. Not that night, not the next day, and not the day after, when I was discharged with a memory box instead of a baby. I came home to a living room still filled with pink streamers and unopened baby books. I put them away slowly, one by one, like I was packing a dream no one else wanted to keep. Outside, the neighbors had strung up their lights. Inside, I unplugged mine. That night, Chris held me as I stared at the ceiling again. "Do you think they'll come tomorrow?" I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because the only thing my parents, Jean and Richard L. chose that week was cake, candles, and my sister Lily's smile. Not me, not my daughter, not the grief that swallowed me whole. My name is Elena Cross, and if you're listening, just know, sometimes the loudest heartbreak is the one nobody comes running for. I thought maybe, just maybe, the silence was temporary, that they'd show up the next morning, that someone would knock on the door with soup, flowers, anything. But all I got was a notification. "Happy birthday to our shining light, Lily." That's what the caption said, posted at 11:12 a.m. A group photo, my parents, my sister, her fiancé, even our childhood dog wearing a party hat. All smiling, all glowing, all together. I stared at it for a full minute, hoping I was misreading. But there it was. The same day I came home with empty arms, they posted balloons and hashtags. I didn't even get a text. A few hours later, my mom sent me a message. Just one line. "I'll drop off some postpartum tea this weekend. Let me know if you need pads or anything." Pads. As if I'd scraped my knee. As if this was some casual recovery, not grief hollowing out my chest. Chris saw the message. He didn't say a word. He just turned his phone face down. I think we both realized something that day. We weren't part of the picture anymore. Maybe we never really were. But the moment that truly shattered me wasn't from them. It was from my daughter. Her name's Eva. She's 5. She walked into the nursery-turned-storage room that afternoon, looked up at me and asked, "If baby Ariel's in heaven, why didn't Grandma come say goodbye?" I froze. What do you say to that? How do you explain intentional absence to a child who still believes everyone shows up when it matters? I crouched down and said the only thing I could. "They were busy, sweetie." But even she didn't buy it. Kids always know. And I know I'm not the only one who's been in this spot. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like no matter how big your pain is, someone else's joy always takes priority? If that hits somewhere, you're not alone. That night I started deleting things. Family threads, shared calendars. I took down the wall photo with all of us smiling at Lily's graduation. I left the nail in the wall. Just the nail. Because it turns out it held nothing anyway. When Chris asked what I wanted for dinner, I said I wasn't hungry. What I really meant was, I was full. Full of the kind of realization that doesn't scream, but still splits you open. They didn't just skip the hospital, they skipped me, and I wasn't going to forget that. I didn't block them, I didn't scream, I didn't even write one of those long emotional texts I'd reread 10 times before hitting send. I just stopped. I stopped replying, stopped hoping, stopped making space for people who had no intention of showing up. The week after the funeral, Chris and I packed up the nursery. There wasn't much, just a white crib, some pastel clothes, and the mobile we never hung. I folded each onesie like it still mattered, even though no one would wear them. We put everything into a storage bin and labeled it with one word: Ariel. I didn't cry. Not then. The crying had stopped when I realized tears weren't currency for people who never bothered to notice them. My mom texted that same day. Thinking of you today. Hope you're taking it easy. Lily said the lemon cake turned out great. We saved you a slice if you want it. A slice? Of what? Pity? Cake? I left the message unread. That night, I sat on the floor in the hallway in front of a framed photo of my parents holding Lily at her baby shower. They'd looked so proud, so present. There's no photo like that of me. No memory of them rubbing my belly, asking for names, or to feel a kick. I think I always knew. I just didn't want to believe it. So I began taking myself out of the narrative. First, I muted the family group chat. Then I left it. I archived our shared photo album, unfollowed my mom and Lily on Facebook, not out of spite, but self-preservation. I deleted the shared holiday calendar and turned off birthday reminders. I kept Eva's, only hers. I even took down the wreath on the front door. It had been a cheerful winter green with little bells. Now it just felt like a lie. Chris noticed the changes. He asked me gently, "Are you okay with all this?" And I told him the truth. No, but I'm done waiting to be chosen. He didn't say anything, just nodded, wrapped his arm around me, and let the quiet be enough. Sometimes healing doesn't look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like logging out. And if you've ever quietly deleted someone from your life without telling them, not to punish, just to protect, I want you to know that counts as strength, too. It was late January when the envelope arrived. No return address, just my name, written in neat cursive like someone still believed this was 1990. I opened it absent-mindedly, thinking it was another sympathy card, though I hadn't gotten many. Instead, it was the New Hope Community Church Winter Bulletin. Inside, recipes, a prayer calendar, a list of newborns and obituaries, and one full-page article that stopped me cold. A Year of Faith, Finding Light in the Darkest Moments, by Jean L. That's my mother. My stomach dropped. There in ink and sentiment was a story, her version. When my daughter Elena lost her unborn child, our family came together in the hospital room. There were tears, prayers, and the kind of pain only a mother could understand. I kept reading. We held her hand. We named the baby together, little Ariel. She looked just like Elena as a newborn. I sat down slowly, the bulletin trembling in my hands. Chris looked up from the sink. "Everything okay?" I passed him the paper. He read in silence, then just whispered, "She wasn't even there." She wasn't. Neither was my father. There was no hand-holding, no prayers. They didn't even call me the next day. They just rewrote it. And not just in words. Next to the article was a photo. My parents, my sister Lily, standing in front of a candle-lit altar. Caption, "In loving memory of our granddaughter lost too soon." That altar, it wasn't mine. I'd never lit a candle. They built their own grief scene, without me. It wasn't just a lie, it was a performance. Chris set the bulletin down carefully. I could see his jaw tighten. "They used you, they used her." He was right. I was invisible in real life, but suddenly front and center in their fiction. And that's when it hit me. They hadn't skipped the hospital out of ignorance. They skipped it because real pain doesn't come with applause. Because it's easier to show up for a photo op than to sit in someone else's grief. I didn't call them. I didn't confront them. But I did scan the article, highlighted every lie, wrote 3 words on the top in red ink. None of this happened. Then I addressed a new envelope to the church. If they were going to share a story, they could hear mine too. I didn't expect a reply, but 2 days after I mailed the envelope, I got a phone call from the church secretary. She sounded nervous, almost like she had done something wrong. "Hi, Mrs. Cross. We received your note. Pastor Allen would like to apologize. He had no idea your family wasn't present during that time." No idea? Of course he didn't, because when the lie is dressed in grief and candlelight, who questions it? She asked if I'd like a written retraction. I told her, "No, I'm not interested in cleaning up someone else's performance. I just wanted the pretending to stop." But the pretending didn't stop. It unraveled. That weekend, my Aunt Marie called me. We hadn't spoken in over a year. "Elena, I read the article. I sent your mom a message saying how proud I was of her strength. She told me she had barely slept for days at the hospital. I didn't know." Her voice cracked. "Why didn't anyone tell us the truth?" I didn't answer, because I didn't owe the truth to people who never asked for it when it mattered. Then came the text from Lily. Long, performative, dramatic. I didn't know Mom and Dad were going to write that. I would have stopped them if I had. But they were grieving too, Elena. Can't you understand that? Grieving what? The moment they skipped? The granddaughter they never met? I didn't reply, but I screenshotted it. Not to post, just to remember what silence sounds like when it finally tries to justify itself. Chris and I had started keeping a folder. Physical, not digital. Inside were copies of everything. The bulletin, the church's apology, text messages, even the ultrasound picture of Ariel. And at the very front, a short note I wrote myself one night when the house was quiet. I will not let them rewrite me. I lived it. I held it. I buried it. That makes it mine. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. And if you're listening, if someone's ever tried to tell your story louder than you could live it, I hope you know you're still the author, even if they print a different version, even if no one claps, even if no one asks, because the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to outlast the lie. And it will. We moved in early spring. The new house wasn't big, just 2 bedrooms, a garden patch Eva called our wild jungle, and a front porch that creaked when you stepped too hard. Which she did, every single day, on purpose. It didn't come with a fresh start. Nothing ever really does. But it gave us space. Space to breathe, space to remember without being watched, space to be okay without needing permission. The first thing I unpacked was the folder, the one with the articles, the texts, the note I wrote. I tucked it into the back of my closet behind an old winter coat, not because I needed it anymore, but because some truths are like insurance policies. You keep them just in case someone knocks, pretending they forgot how things ended. Ava adjusted faster than I did. She made friends, won second place in her school's art contest, started leaving sticky notes on the fridge with jokes and doodles. One day she wrote, "If Ariel were here, I'd share my toys, but not my cookies." I smiled for the first time in what felt like months. Then came December. I didn't decorate, not really, but I did hang one small paper lantern on the porch. White, simple, still. A few days before Christmas, I got an email from the church. They were updating the winter bulletin. This time they asked, "Would you like to share something? Maybe a short reflection." I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I typed, "Sometimes families forget. Sometimes they rewrite. But some of us don't need candles or speeches. Some of us just light a quiet lantern and remember." They printed it. No edits. On Christmas Eve, Eva and I stood on the porch, watching the wind flicker through our lantern. She leaned against me and whispered, "Mom, do you miss them?" I didn't answer right away, but when I did, I told her the truth. I miss who I thought they were, but not who they've shown me they are. She nodded, like she already understood. Kids do that. They understand more than we want them to. And if you're listening, if you've ever rebuilt from the ashes of someone else's absence, you don't need a spotlight to prove you made it. You're here. You're still standing. And that's enough. Thank you for staying with me. If this story echoed something inside you, I hope you light your own lantern tonight. Even if no one else notices, light it anyway.